Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions. Your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Jacob, or possibly Jakob. I don't know how to pronounce that one because I don't know where they're from, but probably one of those two. This 26-minute epic is an entire retelling of a children's book with the same title based on the Moomin universe. I know you usually listen to the music without other visual cues, but I recommend you make an exception with this one and follow along the lyrics while you listen. The song's very lyrically dense, and a lot of the musical flourishes and vocal deliveries can't be fully appreciated without knowing what's being said and which character is saying it. Anyway, hope you enjoy the journey. So I do have the lyrics pulled up. Interestingly, they're written out like a story, more so than lyrics. So I'm curious if this is going to be spoken word or still sung. Regardless, let's dive into it and see what Ritual is bringing to the table with A Dangerous Journey. Nice little 3/4 here. Nice folk feeling.
One morn, she and her cat to sit down on the lawn.
A little bit of tension thrown in there
She
too.
felt out of sorts, hating the summer and hating her thoughts. She said, "Hey, cat, you're no comfort. No, in fact, you're quite a bore." But the cat was just like most cats that above all food adore. But
I like the dual guitar stuff going on.
And she saw just a lousy pet.
You know what's funny is this feels like your everyday RPG village music. It captures that small town vibe.
Everything seemed all too tame. Life was so humdrum and always the same. I wish that danger would come to make life less boring before I go numb. Cat was purring, breeze was stirring.
Okay, so we're looking at a very similar structure to the first time through.
The empty field, and Susanna in a manna to resentment she did yield. That cat is just overfed, and he tires my eyes, she said. So she took off her glasses and put them away in the grass.
Very soft tone, love it.
And then lo and behold, when she did, they were gone in a flash. Instead there lay another pair of a strange kind. When she put on this new pair, she thought she was losing her mind.
Oh, very light shift here.
And the cat, he started growing.
Ooh.
And the girl,
I'm trying so hard to focus on the lyrics too, but there's so many nice little musical movements in here that keep pulling my attention over to it.
cause it was an unpleasant sight as he grew to a monstrous height.
So she put on some glasses and her cat grew into a monster, started...
Through a brand new space,
now we have this tension here.
Huge teeth and claws. Then he loped away, hissing. Soon he was vanished, gone, missing.
Yeah. The movement on the violin is so good. You have that wah, wah, the sliding into the notes of volume and pitch.
Can he come back to me? She cried, but a true remorse.
Nice big choir.
Into a forest deep she went.
Fun little rhythmic device here too. When did this come out? 07? Okay. It feels older, or influenced by older prog rock at least, but the production was definitely newer. So a little bit of an instrumental journey here.
This is a swamp of strange mangrove. I don't belong in here. I know, mirrored in water's dark, I see a hideous face appear. She ran away from the swamp and the face, and she reached an open place. A seashore, but the sea was not there. It had drained away somewhere. She walked astray by the dry ocean bed. Silent birds flew overhead.
So interestingly, both movements so far have explored a verse-chorus structure. After the second verse-chorus, we have a bridge and then an intro or an outro or transition into the next movement. This one was a little less smooth going into the next idea.
To cheer up, she sang aloud. Then she spied a curious crowd. One too shy.
It's interesting how the delay, the echo, is sort of creating a little bit of a hocket.
He was tall and he exclaimed, Susanna, hi, hello. How
The texture layering between the vocals and bells.
They shook hands, they had a chat, and she asked about her cat. They shook heads and looked dismal. We've seen no cat, but the not's completely wrong. I'm absolutely sure nothing here is like it was before. Just out for a walk, you know. But then just a while ago, the world changed, we lost our way. It's peculiar. Anyway, no use to sob. Why don't you come with us? Thingamy and Bob, my dog and me.
It's also minimal too. I didn't really pick up on that till now. I mean, it's over. We're in the next section. Ooh, that bass. Lots of syncopation in this one. Continuing on with the Hocket idea and that previous or the intro to this.
There was a rumble as if the earth crumbled dangerously close. The mountain behind them gave up a fierce roar. Chaos and mayhem. Silence was no more. Out from the mountain.
That was a fun little idea. The bass stealing the show on this.
Thingamy and Bob ran hither and thither. Susanna wondered whatever brought me here. And the dangerous journey continues like the space in a conjurer's hat. And to think that it all had begun with an end to that cat. My tail is on fire, hell this is dire. Somebody cried. A creature came stumbling down from the rumbling mountainside. Try to keep calm, friend, said the Himulin. Who might you be then? Tell us your name, friend. Please go me slip, but
I
I'll
love that.
soon be
That's a
asleep,
fun
so
lick.
why should you care? But I lost the loud noise, muffled his voice, and drowned its despair.
Interesting for the obvious separate takes on that.
They're not okay, no. This is quite stunning. Better start running now.
Oh my
Or this
God.
fiery mountain will kill us. I am sure of it, Susanna cried. It's a dangerous journey, you know. Mulin replied.
Yeah, dude, drumming's great. Funky guitar stuff off on the right. Are we building building something out of this rubble? Story pacing is kind of interesting as they try to build something musical around it. Like, these pauses are kind of awkward in the storytelling, but it works on the musical level. Bringing back the smooth, folky element out of nowhere.
And they made a decision to follow a trail to the west. That's where, in a valley so fair, the good Moomin family dwells. Unless they live around other bends in the strange world, who could tell? They set off as the wind turned cold.
Doing a great job of building intensity, that's for sure. Ooh, the bells on top of the... Yeah. Very somber and melancholic. The movement of the bells, too. That's an interesting choice. There's still 5 sections to go. Less than 10 minutes left. We're gonna be busting through these, I guess. That volcano section took up a big chunk of time. So you can hear the vocalist breath breathing in and breathing out. It makes those choices in Volcano where we had multiple takes overlapping each other with no breath at all intentional. Dude, this is awesome. It's a little bit like a canon. I think. Yeah. 3-part canon. You don't hear that too often in rock.
No sun, blood
Kind of an awkward little harmony here. Lines up well, it's not quite clear what it's representing. You got this smooth walking bass line though.
Two fellows sat in shelter from the
Dotted quarter and a rotondo. Okay. That's a fun line over there.
Now they got company.
This is a weirdly fun section.
We're all invited. The soup was great, they had too much. And then they had a doze at the break of dawn. With a yawn, but bright and breezy.
Oh, so good for that specific word.
They said to Snufkin and his friend, tripped and fell. Sleepy all could tell. Keep to the southwest. Snufkin said just as they left. Then he made clear the valley's just a day from here. They walked with ease. Past the forest, crossed the fight. Soon the scenery turned strange and threatening.
No. This is too good. Oh, jeez, this is too good. Oh, dude, the bass under the violins, so good. It's very light, which makes sense. They're in some sort of air balloon here. This is very reminiscent of the first movement too. Very folky 3/4. Nice pleasant sway to it. That line. It's very light, very free. Oh, we brought back the accordion. This is very much like the beginning.
They were all welcome, of course, to Santa too. They held a party outdoors. They sometimes do. And there was the stray, all purring away. A cat.
The cat. No way.
Had Susan a strange journey been for real or not? It doesn't seem to matter an awful lot, true or untrue. But why bother to unravel?
It's just such a calming outro. All right, I took a ton of notes on here. Most of it is more of a narrative perspective. There's still 2 seconds left. Most of it's from a narrative perspective, as it just kind of captured what each of the movements was exploring, less so about how it was exploring it, more so about the vibe, the feeling of it, hoping my memory can fill in some of the blanks. It's usually pretty good at that, but this had a ton of music to it too. So there was certainly a part about 14, 15, 16 minutes into this track when I realized that I should not have done this on my desk and I should have done it in a text editor, and I could have just taken so many more notes on it. Because I didn't think it was going to be this dense. I don't usually take notes on single song reactions, even when they're a bit longer like this. So we're going to touch on as much as I can. Aside from per section notes, I also have 8 or so little topics I might touch on or pepper into the discussion about the way that they generally write and some reoccurring compositional techniques that I saw on this. But I suppose let's start from the top. The song kicks off with the movement Cat. What happens here? I guess we're going to do lyrics and music together. What happens here is that we have a character named Susanna, and they're sitting around and just hating things. Life isn't going great. They hate the summer. They hate their thoughts. They feel all out of sort. They look at the cat and say, hey, you're a bore. But, the cat doesn't care. They don't understand. They just want some food. She feels that life is too tame and humdrum. One day, though, while in a field, she takes her glasses off, looks away, looks back. Different pair of spectacles there now. She puts them on and the world changes around her. The cat begins to grow and then runs away. Generally speaking, this part of the song gave me a very RPG Towns vibe. It's a very small, semi-whimsical kind of feel. It's very tight and orchestrated. There's multiple instruments going off, doing melodic things all at the same time. We have violin, we have accordion, we have dual guitars. I don't remember bass in here. There wasn't much drum work at all, I don't think. I don't think there was a drum kit at all in here. And then the vocals on top of most of this. We had the instrumental part in the middle. And it just kind of gave quiet, small town vibes throughout most of it. Very light, very nonchalant, just kind of being. I like it though. One of the things I love about it is the way that all of the parts sort of interlink when you listen to the accordion and then two guitars and eventually the violin that joins in. And they're all like filling in each other's spaces. They're all rhythmically interesting. And where one might play a couple of notes and then there's, a one beat break or two beat break, that's where another instrument will come in and fill that in with something moving. And then when they have some rest, another instrument, it sort of bounces around like this. Three parts that are generally constantly going in their own worlds, but are interlocking into this beautiful clockwork mechanism. It's much like how a town works, where everyone does their own part. And, hopefully, if everyone's doing their job well, the town runs. If any one of them breaks down, though, the town begins to come to a halt a little bit as there's repercussions for them not getting their job done. And with a small town, you pretty much have one or two people who might do the job for the town, the baker for the town or whatever. If they don't bake, there's no bread. If your butcher doesn't do that, there's no food for the town. And this has rippling repercussions. So it really is, this clockwork mechanism here going on. And I think the integration of the musical ideas really sells this complexity and interlocking complexity of the town. But there's also, when you listen to the melody, it's just very light, very uncaring. It just is. There's no immediacy to it. There's no stress or anxiety. It's very laid back, very chill. Yeah, I just kind of want to sway to it, maybe dance to it if you're catching on to that faster three feel. I was focusing on more of the one, the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and just kind of getting this nice sway to it. And this captures Susanna's vibe entirely, that she's just like, summer sucks, man. I'm bored. This cat's boring. Life just needs to be more interesting. Just kind of having that, what would you call it? Like a teenage, it's not angst. It's just apathy, maybe uncaringness, wanting excitement and not finding it where they are. And I think the music just captures this vibe really well. At the end of it, though, I had mentioned that, well, actually during the song, I said, oh, we're starting to see this changing musical landscape. And this was around the time, I suppose, where she put the new glasses on, and the world shifted around her, and then her cat began to grow. And then this moved into the swamp section, which was just tension. It was a lot of short notes, bump, 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 sometimes staying on a single tone and just like wanting to move to another chord or something and just kind of sitting there. A lot of this section was just kind of focusing on this anxiety as Susanna was trying to go through this forest to find her cat and eventually comes upon this swamp and sees her own face in the mirrors of the water, and she runs out of here. In the middle of this track, though, there is an instrumental section that I really loved. It was mysterious while also carrying a little bit of adventurous whimsy. I kind of took this as her walking through the forest, moving from the beginning to the swamp. And I just thought that this worked really well. It was fairly lengthy. I don't think we had an instrumental section that long up until this point in the track. It's a very lyrically dense song, as I'm sure you're aware. And it was impressive that I think the violin, was it? Maybe it was the accordion. One of the two took over lead melody writing away from the vocals. And we started to get this narrative delivered through the music, something that feels like tiptoeing around a dangerous place, but not too dangerous. And I think it really keeps that. I don't know what the age rating of this story is. It was based off of a book, right? Am I misremembering that part of the context on this? But I'm getting a young adult vibe from it. And it captures that dangerous but not too dangerous feeling that you would get in Harry Potter or, His Dark Materials, or I'm certainly dating myself with these young adult novel suggestions. You could tell when I stopped paying attention to this genre of novel. um, and I think, well, like I said, it does a good job of capturing that vibe. But that's about all that we saw here. I think it was more narratively interesting, but less dynamic than the first section was. And I think that makes sense for what was happening narratively. Now, after this, we have the meeting, which is where Susanna meets up with the Hemulin, Thin Gummy, and Bob. One was shy and one was small. They were the Hemulin together. One was Thin Gummy and one was Bob. And what did I write for this one? Oh, the bells came in here. Yep, that was a cool section. We got the first instance of texture layering. This was also a bit more minimal than anything else we had heard in the song. And I thought, just generally speaking, it was nice to kind of see this pacing where the swamp kind of took away some of the dynamic writing and gave us something a bit more static to be built on top of, which is where we get the melody writing. And here we've removed most of that and come down to the most minimal part of the song so far. And it's almost this descent, almost. It's a downward element of removing concepts and kind of taking things as far as we can in order to build back up from them. And as far as the idea of a person leaving their normal world to go into this fantasy story world, and to slowly strip things away that they're familiar with and then present them with stuff that they are not familiar with, I think is very cool to represent in the music, as they do it compositionally more so than through recurring motif or chord progression or anything like that. Although we do see a return back to a similar chord progression to the town song, the cat section, towards the end of the track. And I think that was very cool to sort of foreshadow her return back to town in that final segment. We had the synths showing up here. There's a lot of reverb. We had the reverb sort of creating a hocket with itself. This was cool because we didn't really have multiple ideas to interlock and connect like we have in previous ones. So we have one idea that sort of bounces around itself. The reverb creates its own rhythmic hocket. But otherwise, this was just to me, a bit of a lull. We didn't have a lot of strong melody here. We didn't have a strong backbone to it. It really felt like biding time until we could get to the next thing, which honestly, narratively, it's about some characters meeting. That's about it. And then they decide to join up and continue the journey together. This takes us to the longest section in the track, the volcano. And this is fairly intense. It's high energy. It is about a volcano exploding. The first set of lyrics, there was a boom, a great blast of doom, and everyone froze. I think that's very cool, though. Volcano being fire. It talks about having a fierce roar and earth crumbling, a hot fountain of lava, but everyone froze, bringing a cold element into that. Now, mostly what's going on here is we see people in danger. One person says, "My tail's on fire. Hell, this is dire." Oh, geez, I almost forgot about this fantastic wordplay. He says, "We better start running." Says, "This volcano, we're not okay, no." It's so stupid, but I love it. It is fantastic. And if this weren't a lengthy video already, I'd share a little anecdote of good wordplay that is also really dumb. But this is already going to be a lengthy video, so no time for an anecdote. Maybe next live stream if y'all remind me. So we have someone who says it's a dangerous area. We got to flee away from the lava. And they gathered around, tried to figure out what was best. And they went to a valley, or they said there's a valley over there where the good Moomin family dwells, and that's where they set off. Now this section, fantastic bass, syncopation. We got a little bit of cool guitar work in here as well, a heavier vibe overall. I thought this was really nice to contrast with the chill ideas that we had in the first movement, which was very boring. Life is ho-hum. I just need some excitement. It's just cheerful, light music. And then here we have intense, layered, dark. It's heavier, it's lower in pitch. A lot of great ideas to heavily contrast it with her hometown motif. We got some funky guitar work in here, just cool syncopated stuff off of on the side. Actually, there's a lot of syncopated ideas in here. But well, there's also cool melodic drumming in here, and it's actually been present throughout the whole song, but here, well, in the parts that the drums have been around. But here I think it really takes center stage and we hear some really neat drum ideas. Unfortunately, funky guitar, excellent bass lines, and melodic drumming could not save this section for me though, because it goes into that I'm gonna catch some flack for this. Into that strange 70s prog rock, let's do some wild experimental avant-garde ideas. And we go into these places where there's just random notes, random rhythms, the harmony gets discarded, groove gets discarded. I understand they're trying to capture this idea of a place falling apart, being bombarded by rock and lava. It's not going to be something that is harmonious or rhythmically in tune with itself anymore. It is supposed to be chaotic. I didn't really get that from it. I understand the idea behind it. I just don't think the execution was sound. And to me, it felt more like when Genesis did this stuff 30 years prior. And it almost feels like they're wearing their influences on their sleeve more so than trying to do something new that matches what they're already playing. And I don't want that to be a jab at Ritual. This is one track that I've heard from them. Maybe there are other songs where they explore things that are more them. And there's a lot of parts of this song that I think are them too, but there's also a lot of that folky prog rock stuff that Genesis, I know Genesis did a lot of here too. And this is one of the ideas that I've never really been fond when older bands have done it. I've never been fond when Genesis did it. I'm not really fond when Ritual does it. Like I said, I get the intention behind it. It ruins this section. It drags it out. The pacing becomes poor. I really think that, I mean, there are a lot of lyrics for Volcano. And honestly, they all kind of say the same thing. All of it talks about how dangerous this place is and how there's fire everywhere and lava everywhere. Maybe some of it could have been cut down, but particularly I think we could have explored this idea of a breaking down of a section or a town under assault by flaming rock in a way that worked better with what the music was already doing, that sells this idea in a different way and doesn't repeat itself like 2 times, 3 times. And really stretches and drags this section out. This is the only section of the entire song that I found myself thinking, okay, when do we move on to the next chapter? I think everything else is rather well paced. Even the more repetitive sections like Cat and Glasses, the very first section of the song has a pretty straightforward verse, chorus, bridge, chorus idea in it. And even despite that, and a very minimal change to any of that moving throughout it, I still found that it was better paced than Volcano. But Volcano had some of the best composition outside of its final 40% of the section, and I like what most of the instruments are doing leading up to that, so I don't know, I'm kind of 50-50 on it, man. From here, though, it is rapid fire movement between sections. As I mentioned at this time, there was like 8 minutes to go and we had 4 or 5 sections left. We start moving through them quickly. We have Cold, which is just somber and melancholic. We have that cool vocal canon that goes on there. I think it's trying to embody this feeling of being frozen at night, trying to go through a valley that is just ice and snow and blizzard. And it says no one wanted to talk. No one had cheer. There was no sun. There was no fun. We just went. We just one foot in front of another, and it wasn't a fun evening. That was it. Very short section music. Well, there's a long build up into it, but it was a shorter section musically, a very short section lyrically. They did find a fire though, a cave with 2 people sitting in it, Snuffkins and Whimsy. and they had onion soup, and that's what this section is called. And so our adventurers have some soup and get some rest, and they wake up ready, but still sort of drowsy. Says Sniff tripped and fell, still sleepy, all could tell. And they're heading into the valley looking for the Moomin village. Well, the Moomin family. That's that whole section. I didn't write anything down here other than weirdly fun and walking bass. I think that was another section that was a bit on the shorter side. I just didn't take a lot of notes on it. Maybe it was also a very singular focused musical idea. I do remember the harmony being a little awkward, though. I'm curious about the characters, maybe a bit more information about them in the storybook, because here there's not much said about them. The music is, I think, trying to personify them, but it just comes across as sort of wacky and carnival-esque, circus-esque, more than anything else. And we don't really get to know anything about them other than that they make some fantastic soup and didn't try to harm our travelers in any way as they rested together in the cave. Now, this, though, takes us to one of the best surprises in here, which is the heavy metal section titled Monster. After they left the campfire, they felt an ominous presence. Something was lurking. It was evil in essence. And so they ran as fast as they could. There's a cool thing here where we have the main vocals, something off to the left. It's a repeat of the last couple of lines of the main vocals, or like finishing up its sentence or something like that. It plays with the vocals, and then there's growling off on the right that says something about just behind you or something like that. And it actually sounds, kind of creepy, kind of eerie. I was not expecting anything metallic coming from this group, but I think they nailed it. They have an old school heavy metal vibe going on. They got the growling. It's not, professional death metal harshes, but it's monstrous. It catches the mood really well. It is that dangerous but still light feel that has that young adult vibe to it. It works, It works. It's surprising. It's a nice change of pace, and it absolutely elevates the intensity of that section and drives this forward until we get to the next section, which that one was short. This one's short too. It's called Balloon. There's an air balloon. They jump onto it, and as soon as they get in it, we have very light feeling music. It's very free. It actually has a little bit of some sections that sound like Cat in Glasses, the first section. It isn't quite town music yet, but it does carry some allusions to the motifs of that. And I think this is fantastic because in the balloon, that's where they're going. But it says that we get to see the whole world, that it's changing again. It was a pleasant flight. And just talks about kind of hovering in the air and seeing all of this, the valley slowly appearing, where the Moomin family is. And it's just such a light and freeing track. It feels weightless. There's that one little do 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 do, that little line there that just, it wasn't those specific notes, because that doesn't feel very free, doesn't. That's why I'm not a singer. But the notes that they chose feels very light and effortless. And just all of the instrumentation choices, a lack of really heavy low end here. The way that all of these parts are beginning to interlink again, rather than going for this singular sound that we hear on several of the other tracks that led up to this. Onion kind of didn't really have any interlocking pieces. Cold was just a lot of chords. It gave us that somber feeling. Monster was this, singular feeling about, being chased by something big. We don't really have a lot of these interlocking parts anymore. And this is where it starts to come back as a little bit of foreshadowing to a party outdoors. They land at Susanna's town, and her cat's there, and she asks if it had been real or not. But it doesn't really matter. True or untrue, why bother to unravel? Just accept the journey for what it is. Especially in a very literal sense, you asked for adventure, and you got some. Who cares if it was real? You had a good time. And so we return back musically where we started, creating a little bit of a cycle, and ending our song exactly where we began it, because our story does too. It's very nice to see how this kind of wraps up. I think each section does a great job of telling its story narratively, even without the lyrics. You know, I would not have gotten the story itself, but I would have caught up. I would have caught on some of these things: the light vibe, the tension, the danger of volcano, the melancholy of cold. I don't know what I would have pulled from onion soup. Monster, heavy metal. I mean, that's just, you can't miss that. That's a big intentional change to the song. And then bringing some of the motifs back for balloon and ending where we start with party outdoors. I would have caught on to some of these vibes and patterns, even if I didn't understand or be able to recite, the story itself. I think they do a great job of telling that story musically. A couple of things that I do want to touch on, though. Lots of hockets in here, lots of interlocking rhythmic parts. There's a lot of rhythmic variety in here. It's what gives this song so much of a dancey, swayy vibe, is that there's always some sort of pulse to lock into that isn't just, some rigid idea. And they do play around with metric modulation at times as well. Shifting to the dotted quarter notes during that ritardando was really fun. I can't remember what section that was in. Was that meeting? That might have been the meeting. Um, Vocal stacks, all the harmonic elements in here. It's just fantastic. Anytime that we have harmony between vocals and instruments, instrumental harmonies, the canon that we had during Cold, the vocal harmonies that we've had throughout, the call and response, all the vocal work on this is fantastic. The accordion is a neat instrument that I love hearing more of. I think it works very well in the context it's used here, but the instrumentation as a whole on this track is excellent. I love the violin, the bells. We have the drum kit, but also the auxiliary percussion that shows up from time to time. The cello that came in for one movement and just absolutely fit for what it was doing. Yeah, it's just everything was picked. And even the guitars, the acoustic guitars, the electric guitars, the tones that they use on them, everything just feels like it was perfectly selected, or even in a sense handcrafted. Not that I think the band built these instruments, but they feel like they were designed for this song. Everything just perfectly captures the feeling that that voice should be portraying with its part. I don't know what that's. Oh, that's instruments. What does that say? 3-part writing. Yes. I don't know what the other one says. Maybe I'll read that in a second. Oh, clear production. I really need to improve my handwriting. The production on this is fantastic. Like I mentioned, it was one of the things that really pushed me into thinking that this wasn't a 70s band and that this was some retro revival for the prog rock sound. But the production on this is fantastic from start to finish. I don't think I have a single complaint about mixing or sounds in general or compression or any of that. It is always doing what it needs to do, even with some of the more dated ideas of heavy use of panning, which again, I really think is them wearing their inspirations on their sleeve a bit. Even those sections tend to sound really great and capture some sort of vibe or sound. The 3-part writing, though, is consistent throughout this. There is usually 2 instruments off to the side and 1 center, and they are usually working together in some way. Even when we have tracks like Monster and Onion, where they're a bit more singular in focus, there's usually still some sort of subtle difference between these 3 instruments so that they can work together to form something larger. I think the only song that doesn't have anything like this is Cold, and that's because it's pretty much pure chord progression in order to sell an atmosphere. But everything else has multiple moving parts all going off at the same time. And most of them are rather different. All 3 parts are really unique, but they work together exceptionally well. And I'm just a huge fan of that. Great writing from start to finish here. And that's about it. We don't need to do lyrics because we kind of went over them with the music. I kind of want to read the book now. It's probably aimed at kids. In fact, I vaguely remember the requester mentioning it was aimed at kids, which just means I can read it in a few seconds, right? Like a short 30-page story picture book, right? I don't know, but I kind of want to get a little bit more into this. I think the world is interesting. And I mean, when it comes to that onion soup, I want to know more about Snufkin and Whimsy. Why do they have music like this? I think that's my really big question I want answered. Anyways, these are my thoughts on Rituals, A Dangerous Journey. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own perspective or opinion on this. Please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.